Hi, my name is Megha, and I'm a postdoc in Jens Norskov Group at the Technical University of Denmark. And in this video, I'm going to talk about scaling relations in homogeneous catalysis. This is one of our recent projects, and I'll be discussing in detail about it in this video. Now, as chemists and chemical engineers, we want to be able to develop the best possible catalyst for the reaction of interest, and we want our uh, uh, catalysts to be stable, recyclable, cheap, as well as selective. Now, for being able to develop the best possible catalyst, we should be in a position to compare catalysts of various different types, and that includes organocatalysts or organometallic complexes, different surfaces, oxides, and nanoclusters, and whatnot. And only when we can compare catalysts of different types, we can predict better ones. And once we can predict better ones, it can be synthesized and tested, and that's how we can reach we can try to reach to our goal of having the best catalyst for the reaction. Now, there are two different types of artificial catalysts that are known and used. One is the heterogeneous catalysis, where we have a solid array of highly structured metal atoms, and it can also be oxides, but it's the atoms on the surface that are usually active and do the reaction. And then we have homogeneous catalysts, where we have a metal atom which is surrounded by organic moieties around it. One can have just organic molecules also acting as a catalyst, and that's an entire different that's also a subsection of homogeneous catalysis called organocatalysis. But usually it's the organometallic complexes like the one shown in this figure that are used. So similar to heterogeneous catalysis, where we have different oxides, different metal atoms, kinks, terraces, nanoclusters. Similarly, there are variations in homogeneous catalysis as well. And you can have variations in terms of different metals or the organic groups around the metal. It can be phosphorus, nitrogen, or oxygen-based ligands. Or you can have variations in the geometries, just like we have different shapes of nanoclusters in heterogeneous catalysis. You can have similar variations in the structures of these organometallic complexes. One can also have multimetallic complexes, and it can be hetero multimetallic or homo multimetallic complexes. And such multimetallic clusters are usually characteristic of active sites in what we see in enzymes. Now, the question is that if we want to develop good catalyst, like the best possible catalyst for a reaction, we should be in a position to compare different catalysts, as I mentioned in the second slide. But the question is, like, how do we compare catalysts from two different domains that have developed independently over time? And with a coming from a group with a PhD training in homogeneous catalysis to a postdoc group where they mostly excel in heterogeneous catalysis, I was intrigued, and I asked this question to myself, like can we use scaling relations and volcano plots to compare different homogeneous catalysts? Because in heterogeneous domain, this is a very standard, very well-known concept, but for the heterogeneous, it is not. So this was the question that I asked myself, and it was not very obvious, because on one hand we have multiple active sites in heterogeneous catalysis, and on the other hand we have homogeneous catalysis, where we have single site and different organic groups around it. So the question was, like, can the concepts from heterogeneous be applied to homogeneous? And that is scaling relations and volcano plots. And so with that key question in our mind, we picked up a reaction from literature. It's Buchwald-Hartwig amination reaction. It's a very preferred method for CN coupling and for making amines. And what it comprises of is an aryl halide, as you see here, and halide is the X, and it can be bromine, chlorine, iodine, or triplet. And that combines with an amine group. In this case, you can see this nitrogen, and there are R2, R3, and then hydrogen. It can be a primary amine, it can be a secondary amine, or it can also be ammonia. And you can see that eventually the product that's being formed has a carbon-nitrogen bond. Now, this reaction is catalyzed by mostly palladium complexes, which is shown in this yellow box. And Ln in this case is the ligand, N is the number of ligands. And usually if one wants to tune the performance of this reaction, it's the ligand L that's being varied. And that's how you tune the reaction as per your need, as per the substrates or the reaction conditions. Now, what do we need for making the volcano plot for this particular homogeneous reaction? We need different catalysts, and in our case, it's going to be the different ligands. So different ligands with the palladium metal atom. And then we make a free energy diagram for each of these ligands to get the energies of different reaction intermediates and transition states. And once we have these energies, we make scaling relations. We derive the scaling relations among different reaction intermediates and transition states. And once we have the scaling relations, we can deduce the reaction rate in terms of those scaling, in terms of the descriptor energy. And that's basically that forms the volcano. The whole idea of this scaling relations and volcano plot is that we want to be able to predict the performance of a catalyst in terms of one descriptor. For example, in this case, energy of the intermediate I2 is my descriptor. And as you can see that now I will be able to say that, hey, red catalyst is the best catalyst just based on the descriptor energy I2. So with that in mind, we started, so this is the reaction mechanism for the Buchwald-Hartwig amination reaction, which is the first catalyst substrate combination, followed by the oxidative addition of the phenyl bromide. And then there's physiosorption of the amine group to the metal atom. And then the base helps in abstracting the hydrogen from the nitrogen. And finally, there's reductive elimination step where there is carbon-nitrogen bond is formed. And eventually there is desorption of the catalyst and the product, as you would have in any chemical reaction, any catalytic reaction. Now, coming to the part of where we have variations in the catalyst. Now, as I mentioned that for this Buchwald-Hartwig amination reaction, it's the L that is being varied. And we have two sets of ligands that we have considered in our study. One is the monophosphine ligand, and the other is a biphosphine ligands. And we chose 27 different monophosphine ligands, that's the first top part, and 10 different biphosphine ligands. I know the structures are quite complex, but all that I want to emphasize on this slide is that there is quite variations. The structures are very different. They will have different conformations. They will have the phosphorus, the ligating atom phosphorus will have different affinity towards the palladium, and we want to know like whether scaling relation holds or not. Now, if we look at this left hand side, it's a binding of nitrogen species on a heterogeneous surface, and it's kind of intuitive, like you would have scaling relation between the energies of between the binding energies of nitrogen and the metal surface, and the energies of NH2 or NH3 adsorbates. But it's just not obvious, like how would such relations hold when you have a metal adsorbate interaction along with different organic groups around it. Now these large organic groups can interfere with how the metal atom would interact with the adsorbate, and then it's just not clear like whether scaling would hold or not. And so for that, we evaluated the free energy diagram for each of those 37 ligands that I showed before, comprising of 27 monophosphine and 10 biphosphine ligands. And you can see the top free energy diagrams for the monophosphine ligands and the bottom one for the biphosphine ligands. And there is a continuum of energy for each of the reaction intermediates for each of the ligands. And this is like already given an indication of possibility of scaling relations in this particular reaction. And then the next step is that now that we have energies for the different reaction intermediates and transition state, the next step is to deduce the scaling relations among the different reaction intermediate energies and transition states. So this is the scaling relations between the oxidative addition reaction intermediates and transition states with respect to intermediate I. So you can already see there's quite a good scaling relation already for the oxidative addition step. And in fact, it holds even for the reductive elimination step. And so this was great, and we were very excited about it. And then we decided to make the volcano plots. Now I would like to, this is a complex diagram, but right now I want you to just focus on the gray region. And in fact, it is experimentally known that the generation 1 ligands work poorly for primary amines. And remember, our amine is methylamine. And in fact, our volcano plot shows the same. You see the gray regions, these are the first generation ligands. They give the lowest possible rate among all the ligands that we have considered in our study. Now the next comes the generation 2 ligands. Those were, so after the generation 1 ligand, we had the generation 2 ligands for this reaction, and that was basically a biphosphine ligand as shown in this figure. It was found that generation 2 ligands, that's biphosphine ligands, that had a bite angle theta of around 90 degree, that showed some improvements over the generation 1 ligands. And you can see that this ferrocene-based ligand, which is yellow marker here, and that lies very close to the top of the volcano, and in fact that has a bite angle of around 90 degrees. So so far it seems to be reasonably predicting the experimental trends. And then lastly comes the generation 3 ligands, and the way it differs from the generation 1 ligand is that there is a bi-aryl group as a third substituent on the phosphorus atom. And generation 3 ligands, also known as the Buchwald ligands, are the best known ligands that we have for the Buchwald-Hartwig amination reaction. And you can see that the generation 3 ligands, as the yellow box, they are the best. And in fact, these yellow label ligands are some of the best that we have for primary amines for this particular reactions. So to conclude, scaling relations do hold for homogeneous catalysis, and we believe that scaling relations and volcano plots can provide a guide towards developing universal rules of catalysis, which will encompass all different types of homogeneous and heterogeneous catalysis. And eventually, we would be able to predict different best possible metal ligand combinations with the help of volcano plots for homogeneous catalysis reactions as well. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me at my email or chat with me. And with that, I would really like to thank my advisor, Professor Jens Norskov, and the research group at CAT Theory and funding agencies for their generous support. And thank you all for listening to my video, and have a nice day.